belt and placed it a few inches above the wound and made a makeshift tourniquet. Then I wrapped it in my t-shirt, elevated it, and hoped for the best. He obviously couldn't drive, and I figured I was sober enough to drive the straightest highway in the world. I'm usually extremely against drunk driving, but I wasn't staying around to play with whatever was outside. I helped him hop his way over to the passenger seat and ran back to the driver's seat. Maybe it was the adrenaline or the tequila, but I was scared as hell. I could barely hold onto the steering wheel because my hands were shaking so badly. I tried to throw in some shitty jokes to lighten the mood, but they were more for myself than him. At first, I cruised along at a mere 70 miles per hour, to play it safe. But pretty soon my friend started to quite literally scream in pain. The way he described it was, 1,000,000 daggers flowed through my fucking bloodstream. I sped up after that and the ETA dropped slowly on the GPS. My friend was in complete agony the entire time, but I honestly couldn't do a thing for him. I told him to bite the seatbelt, but I knew he was beyond that kind of pain. For about 5 minutes he began muttering and slurring his words. It then progressed to something completely incomprehensible. Then he was quiet, but he still had his eyes open. I sped up to about 90 miles per hour because I was so worried he was going to die. I was trying to get a signal on my cell phone when I noticed a bunch of blue and red lights scatter around the inside of the car. Shit! I'm drunk, my license is expired, and I'm speeding. Keep in mind, I've never seen a cop the entire time I've been on this road. I begin to slow down gradually and look for a good place to pull over. As I'm looking in the mirror, I notice that my friend's radar detector is not going off. Weird. I'm picturing a billion situations in my head and all of them end badly. First I'll get destroyed on the civilian side with a DUI and a ton of fines. Then I'll get absolutely destroyed by my command. Loss of pay, restriction to my room, and demotion. Fuck. I keep looking for a good spot to pull over. I round a slight bend in the road and take my eyes off the rearview mirror. The road straightens out and I immediately look back at the mirror. Nothing yet. I keep driving and glance a few more times. Nothing at all. What the hell? My eyes are locked on the mirror and now I'm waiting for these lights to come around the bend. Absolutely nothing. Suddenly my gaze is averted by a flashing orange light in front of me. I slow down even more and there's a sign in the middle of the road that says, "Road closed. Detour," with an arrow pointing to the left. Granted, this is a straight road and I'm not going off on some dirt road detour in a Honda Civic, even if it means I can evade the cops. I stop right in front of the sign and grab the GPS off the dash. As I'm looking at all the different routes, the cop car suddenly comes up literally out of nowhere and it's behind me now, flashing its lights. Straight up materialized. I look in the mirror and I don't see anyone in the front seats. I don't see any cops walking towards me, but I am beyond creeped the fuck out at this point because a mysterious cop car just appears out of nowhere. My friend is still unconscious and was bit by something crazy. Suddenly all the lights go off. I step on the gas and run over the stupid sign in my way. The cop car doesn't follow me. I spend about 5 minutes going dangerously fast before I start to slow down. Visibility is still shit, but after driving this road enough, you know where all the bends and curves are, thankfully. Up ahead, my headlights reflect off of something, and I start to slow down thinking there's another sign to tell me the road is closed. Nope. Off on the side of the road were a bunch of cars, extremely similar in shape to a cop car that was behind me, except it was just a burnt-out shell. One car was flipped completely and another was on its side, both burnt to blackened metal as well. I wonder if that would have been my car if I stopped for this mysterious cop car out of nowhere. I never saw another road closed sign, and eventually got on a bigger, more frequented highway just outside Primm. At this point, I got service and called 911, who told us the closest hospital was in Vegas. When we arrived, I went in first and told the situation to the receptionist. They came out with a wheelchair and whisked him away whilst I sat in the waiting room, filling out some dumb form. All I know was that they couldn't stitch his leg up due to the nature of the bite, but cleaned and bandaged the wound. He did eventually wake up a few hours later with some sweet drugs. It was almost 5 by the time we checked into our hotel. He spent the weekend in the hotel whilst I lone wolfed around the city in his honor. We were both extremely sure to drive back during the middle of the day. The only weird thing that happened that I could say was the sun was trying to kill us even when it was setting. Even with sunglasses on and the sun visors down, we couldn't see a damn thing. We had to slam on the brakes after seeing a car driving extremely slow in front of us. Eventually, the sun went down and we were treated with hundreds of different colors, constantly changing in complexity and warmth. We did not see the burnt-out cars, the signs, or any more cops. However, we did see 2 cars that had obviously collided head-on, pushed to the side. Both front ends were horribly mangled. We didn't see anyone inside, so we kept driving. I honestly don't believe that whatever had bit my friend was a coyote. They're usually extremely skittish and scared of humans. The bite marks don't match what my friend had either, nor the excruciating pain. It had to be in connection with whatever or whoever was trying to run us off that road. So much for a relaxing weekend after the field. I'm going to take a break from chronological order for a moment to briefly talk about something more recent. If you follow me on Twitter, you'd know that I went out on another field up last week. I happened to be going along another ghost town, also known as MOUT towns. This one was much smaller and not that far away from the base. There were maybe 8 buildings in total, and they varied from a single story to 3-story buildings. Here's a picture from outside the town. We spent all day hiking to this town. It was just about late afternoon when we had finally set down our packs in the buildings. The bone-chilling wind decided to pick up and temperatures hovered around freezing as the sun slowly disappeared. We spent the next 5 hours practicing various skills in an urban environment. Cleaning rooms, detainee handling, throwing frag grenades, etc. It got old pretty fast, considering I've been doing this for years now. Around 10 PM we were given the go-ahead to get indoors and get away from the wind, and get some goddamn sleep in our warm sleeping bags. I took the first watch because I like to get a good block of sleep in. After an hour, I woke up the next guy and went to sleep. I was asleep for maybe 30 minutes before I was woken up with a nudge. I groggily emerged from my bag and I noticed it was one of the newer guys who had just woken up for the watch. He'd been here for maybe a month or 2. My first words were, understandably, "What the fuck do you want?" "Well, spit it out." "For the last 10 minutes, I kept seeing these 2 yellow dots across the street. In the window." "Okay." "I was staring at them for a while until I heard what sounded like you to call me over. Except you were in your sleeping bag." Absolutely pissed beyond belief, I put my boots on, grabbed my rifle, and stormed across the street. I went to open the door and it was locked. These doors don't have locks for safety reasons, so they must have barricaded the door or tied it. I went around back and tried the other door. Locked. Got it. Whoever was in there was a fucking dick for scaring the new guys and waking me up. As I walked back across the street, I heard a, "Where are you going?" But it definitely wasn't another Marine. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I stopped dead in my tracks. The voice was kind of a mix between a whisper and it carried an icy, mocking tone with it. Yeah, fuck that shit, I'm going back indoors. I locked eyes with the guy who woke me up and we both understood what the hell just went down. I told him to wake up the next guy in a few minutes and go back to sleep. I got back into my sleeping bag and drifted off to sleep as I tried to burn all the details into my memory. For you guys, of course. I didn't get woken up until sunrise. The wind seemed even fiercer and was still ungodly cold. But we were indoors luckily and the sun was rising. Not bad. Pretty soon we got the word that we had to move all of our packs and go about 100 meters from town. A few guys complained and griped, but we did as we were told. I was equally curious as to why we had to move our packs outdoors. The scuttlebutt was that a few guys, including the commanding officer, had some weird experiences in one of the buildings during the night. All of them refused to sleep in the buildings ever again. I drifted around whilst everyone was shaving and eating to see if I could shed some more light on the sudden exodus from the town. I found one of the guys that were in the building pretty quickly, and I asked him what he'd seen. Basically, the night started out with all the guys huddled around listening to my stories on YouTube so they could scare the newer guys. A few hours later, a few of them started having crazy nightmares about being in the town and some creature with cat-like eyes tearing them apart. Except they were kind of dreams that never ended. You wake up from one and you're in another. They never knew if they were in the real world. The guy on watch tried waking them up, but they just continued to breathe heavily, sob, whimper, and fidget. When they woke up, they were terrified and the message was clear. Get the fuck out. I didn't really know what to make of it all, but I told them to quit listening to my damn stories. Not here, at least. I'm assuming that this thing was in the building across from mine, but later messed with the other building for God knows what reason. We continued on with our day and it was packed to the brim with training. During one of our few breaks, I decided to venture to the building that they were all staying in. I had a few guys come with me just in case, and it was pretty basic. A few chairs, a desk, a filing cabinet. I saw that there was a rug on the ground and kicked it on a pure whim. I laughed when I saw the trapdoor. I opened it and looked down, but didn't see anything unusual. I decided to just take a few pictures and move on. Should have seen the door, and here's a painting on the wall, and maybe a falafel menu or some voodoo shit. Translations are welcome. The rest of the day was pretty uneventful. We continued on into the night with our classes and training. It was mostly a blur. I had gotten back into my sleeping bag and uploaded the picture of the trapdoor onto Twitter and went to sleep. Around 3 AM, I was woken up for watch and put on just about every warming layer I own because of the wind. It was a pretty dark night due to all of the clouds hiding the moon, but I could still see the outline of various bushes and shrubs on the skyline. I walked around for a bit to keep warm. I turned my back towards the empty desert, away from the wind, and thought of how nice it would be to get back into my sleeping bag. After about 15 minutes, I turned around out of habit and saw a large dark figure on the horizon, maybe 100 meters away. Just as soon as I saw it, it vanished. I made a mental note of the location so I could check it out the next day. I woke up the next guy and got a few more hours sleep before the sun came back up. Unfortunately, I didn't get time to wander off into the desert until around lunch. I grabbed a buddy of mine and we walked to where I was standing when I'd seen the thing. From there, we walked our 100 meters and we were just about to head back when we spotted some wood sticking out a little further away. We kicked a good portion of the sand away and realized it was another trapdoor. What the hell was a trapdoor doing this far out of town? Our packs were 150 meters from the town and the trapdoor was another 100 meters out. It just didn't make any sense to have a tunnel 250 meters away. I wasn't ballsy enough to open the thing, but I knew I had to get a picture. My friend, the mortar man, is half honey badger and decided to open it just as I was taking the picture. We didn't go down, but he could see the bottom. Just an endless ladder. The rest of that day was uneventful and I didn't have watch that night. To be clear, we still trained in the houses during the day and early night, but we didn't sleep in them. I did hear from another close friend that he would get weird vibes from a few of the buildings when we were still in them during the night. The next day, we messed around with simulation rounds, which are basically 9mm bullets with a wax projectile filled with paint. I didn't get shot, fortunately, but they're about 10 times worse than a paintball from my past experiences. Instead of going to sleep that night, we'd gone back into the town to set up a patrol, where some guys would stand post, some would patrol, and some would rest. I swear Marines have amnesia. The night started out uneventful, just a few patrols. We didn't have any enemies, so it was purely just for practice. I slept for maybe an hour and a half, and then we stepped off onto another patrol around the town. It felt like a waste of time, but at least we were out of the buildings. When we came back, we were approached by a bunch of mortar men who'd asked us if we would like to help them find their mortar system. If you don't know what a mortar is, it fires explosive shells out of a cannon into the air. It's not very heavy, and can be effective at decent ranges. Apparently, the guys on the mortar system were all asleep with one guy on watch. He was dutifully standing in the wind, and then he wasn't. He woke up inside the house, and the entire mortar system vanished. He doesn't remember anything and swears he didn't just go to sleep to get away from the wind. This was one of my friends who went and checked the trapdoor out with me, so I trust what he says. Keep in mind, we didn't have an enemy that night, so no one would fuck around and steal shit. These things are extremely expensive and no one would dare mess around like this. People still doubt him. The entire company was woken up at 4 AM and we searched everywhere inside the town in vain. Then we expanded outwards. After about 30 minutes of checking the same areas multiple times, I had an idea. I went over to my mortarman friend and told him we should go check out the trapdoor in the desert that he opened. We grabbed a few other mortarmen and told some other people where we were going. When we got there, the trapdoor was open. Despite how bad the wind was, I sure as hell was not going down there. But the mortarmen were angry and decided to go down just to make sure. I didn't like that idea at all. 3 guys went down and it sounded to be about 10 feet. It was pitch black and the flashlights didn't really seem to do much. They were talking amongst themselves for a few seconds as they walked farther into the tunnel. Then they were out of earshot. 30 seconds passed. Then I started to get worried. I told myself to wait another 30 seconds before I did anything. Just as I was counting down, I heard what sounded like a little girl laugh. Then the sound of running footsteps. Pretty soon I heard the guys climbing up the ladder. I heard the same laugh again, this time closer. The first 2 guys had various components of the mortar system, and the last guy had an actual mortar tube, or whatever it was now. It looked like someone had bent it over their knee. I slammed the door and practically sprinted back to town. Once we got there, we communicated that we'd gotten the mortar system back. The guys that went down had some explaining to do to the officers. I'm sure they understood. I went back to sleep for a few more hours until the sun came up, and we were woken up for a safety brief. Our last and final day there, we were going to be using blank rounds, smoke grenades, and flares. That was another busy day. As soon as the sun went down, we all went to sleep. No more training at night at that town. We all got the message. I didn't have watch again, but I did hear that a few guys heard this laugh during the night. One of the guys supposedly got a recording of the laugh on his phone. Special thanks to 035 None for allowing me to do this story first. If you want to keep up to date with the escapades of this Marine, please be sure to follow his Twitter that I have linked in the description. This series of events has been very, very interesting. I don't know about you, but I don't want to miss a thing. Weird Shit I've Seen as a Marine, Part 6A, by Matthew Hull 0700. So,
Obviously, I'm not 0385 None, and hopefully soon